All right. We are coming to the tail end of a 48-hour threat from Iran against Israel. We've got a mistake, a grave mistake that cost the lives of 7 individuals trying to do charity and service work in Gaza. We've got other threats. To help me go through this, I have with me Colonel Daniel Davis. Colonel Davis, thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, always a pleasure to be here, Stephen. I always appreciate it.
Yeah. So Israel made an attack in Syria, which ended up destroying Iran's consulate and killing one of their top generals. Iran has publicly threatened a revenge attack within 48 hours. We are coming up on the end of that. I have not seen an attack. So I'm not sure if this is a threat that they will follow through with. If they said that, but really they plan to make this strike later, or will things calm down? What are your thoughts? What are you hearing in the military community?
Yeah, what I'm hearing so far is that at least what I have seen that it was actually a CIA claiming that there would be an attack within 48 hours. I have personally not seen Iran itself claim that. To the contrary, what I have seen them doing is being very vague but very emotional about what they're going to do, that they're going to strike hard, that it's going to be an equivalent strike, one for one. There was a report that came out on CBS News about 1 hour ago, actually, saying that there's evidence that, and intelligence rather, specifically intelligence, that it could be a swarm of Shaheeds, the same kind that Russia's been using. There could be a mixture of some cruise missiles, and then it could go after something big. And I think what everybody's bracing for. You've probably seen that there's a lot of Israelis are so concerned they're actually hanging out in bomb shelters. There's a lot of them are leaving some of the major cities to try to get out of the way. I mean, and all their embassies are on hot and alert. So Israel is expecting something big, and Iran itself is going to probably try to thread the needle if it can. It has to do something really big and commensurate with what happened, but it has to try and not make it too big that it's easy for the U.S. and Israel to come together and basically start a war against them, because that's not what they want. And it's a tough balance to try to find. And I fear that this is just between you and me. I think that Israel is trying to get Iran to overreact, because I think they want us to come in on the war, into a war with them against Iran.
Okay, so two questions there then. If they want it to be big but not too big and thread the needle, would they then possibly make an attack in Syria where the original attack happened, but on Israel or on the United States? Or do you think it will actually be on Israel? And then number two, you said you think Israel is trying to provoke them. Is that so that the U.S. military will take a stronger stand with Israel?
That is what, yeah. I think the second, I'll answer the second part first. In John Kirby this afternoon said that the U.S. And he was talking about what he had heard from President Biden in relation to this threat. Said that we are monitoring very closely the very public threat that Israel is making against. I'm sorry, that Iran is making against Israel. That we are absolutely standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel, and we will help them with their national security, which I was not really happy to hear, frankly, because look, we got to look at this honestly. Israel took this action knowingly. This was not some casual, careless operation here. They chose to strike this general in the embassy. That's just something that's unheard of. The only other time that an embassy has been intentionally attacked was against us in 1998, against the Nairobi bombings by Al Qaeda. And you know what we did after that? Certainly that's the case. But I mean, nobody else has ever attacked an embassy, and Israel intentionally did it. They were tracking with their intelligence. They could have taken the guy out on the way to the embassy. They could have got him on the way out of the embassy, but they chose to strike at the most central point, the most emotional symbol for the Iranians, I think, to try and draw a big reaction so that then they could potentially have us join in a war with them. It looks to me like, just reading the tea leaves the way I am after the last 6 months or so, that Israel is trying to say, okay, we're tired of messing with all this stuff we've been doing for decades here. I want to get rid of the Palestinian problem. I want to get rid of the Hezbollah problem on our northern border, and I want to get rid of the Iranian problem. And I think that they are taking lots of very provocative action to try to expand the war. Didn't get much notice here, but on the 28th of March, Israel also attacked into Syria in Aleppo, killing 40 Syrian troops or something close to that number. And wounding some number of others. I mean, they're taking really high profile provocative action, this one being the highest here. And I think that they're trying to just, quote, get this done. But I'm telling you, if that is their thinking, they are making a massive, humongous mistake because they are not going to succeed.
Yeah, it does seem like they are taking bigger and bigger risk and trying to almost have a multi-front war. Well, not almost, to have a multi-front
Right.
war. And just, I'm thinking through a map. Syria is north of Israel, so they end up attacking in there. They attack Aleppo. They attack this consulate. Iran is over to the east of Syria and Israel, but uh, who would have made a final call to give the green light to attack an embassy? Would that have been Netanyahu, or would have
Well,
that?
I can't imagine anybody less than Netanyahu. That something that high profile. I mean, I can't even think that's even conceivable that it would be anybody besides Benjamin Netanyahu. I mean, he's making really all the hard calls here. I mean, it's a war cabinet where they have this joint command center, but he's the guy on the. I mean, he's the prime minister. He makes the final calls.
Yeah. Well, okay. So an attack on Aleppo, an attack on this consulate. That is brazen. To say, I mean, even like, let's say Admiral Kirby went somewhere and he's in a U.S. consulate. You've got to have some serious stones to attack a top admiral from the White House in their own embassy. So definitely taking more and more risks. Do you see any of the other countries being pulled into this? At first, I thought maybe Turkey was going to get involved. Then it seems like they were all bark, no bite. But then Erdogan barely wins re-election. From what I'm reading in international news, the people in Turkey are getting very agitated. They want Turkey to take action. Do you see Turkey getting involved, especially with now these attacks as you're moving up the coast of the Eastern Mediterranean? You are heading towards Turkey. Any thoughts on them getting involved?
Yeah, that is a concern. I'm telling you, there are so many seeds being planted in this region here of instability. The way that Israel is conducting its operations here, and the flagrant way that they're just killing so many innocent people, Arabs for the most part, with the Palestinians. They keep making all these claims about things that they're doing, how careful they're being, but everybody can just see black and white. There's almost no truth to any of it. It's just self-evidently so. And so it's just anguishing to see that they're also holding back food. They're delaying some of the aid getting in. There's literally been thousands of trucks lined up that could have been coming in all along, and yet the population is just on the edge of starvation. That little amount is getting in. Everybody is seeing this, and the anger is continuing to grow. And as I've been warning from the outset of this war, that if Israel doesn't get under control, they risk losing Western support. Now, the Arab street, so-called, and some of these nations, Egypt, Jordan, some of the Emirates, and definitely Turkey, the people are very, very angry at what's been going on here. And if the Israels lose the Western support on top of that, it wouldn't take much encouragement for some other things to start here. This attack into the embassy in Tehran, in Damascus against Iran, has some potential real negative undertones, because whatever Iran is going to do, and that they have to respond in some way, it could also be asymmetric, which means they could, instead of going from their arsenal directly, it could go through a lot of these proxies. So any number of violent groups in Iraq, in Syria, of course, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthis down in Yemen. I mean, they could activate all of these, plus a bunch of others that are, similar size and medium that haven't been engaged yet. I mean, they could really open up a whole new front. If this ever gets into an issue where then Israel overreaction, how they counterstrike and counter respond, it's not out of the question to suggest that some of these other Arab regimes or the Turks could finally start to take some action here. Right now, it seems improbable. In fact, right now, it's not on the table. But if enough pressure gets on those governments, I assure you, they will take action to keep themselves in power, and they're not going to risk an uprising on the behalf of Israel.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned losing the support of the West. That is really in question right now. I'm seeing that within the Democrat Party, the divide is growing between Israel and Palestine. Right now, many Democrat leaders are Jewish and pro-Israel, but many voters are pro-Palestine. And so there is this political division happening within the Democrat Party. In fact, just yesterday, I interviewed Democrat super lawyer Alan Dershowitz, and he told me that if
Interesting.
Biden betrays Israel, the Jews in America will abstain from voting for Biden and could even shift their vote over to Trump. Do you think that Biden is caught between a rock and a hard place on getting reelected and doing what's right? And what are you hearing from your military contacts as far as are they questioning uh, total allegiance with Israel like they would in the past?
Yeah, so two parts there. So the first of all, I think absolutely President Biden has painted himself into a corner. He's in a political no-win situation now. So which means I argue, then just do the right thing. Do the right thing by America, and the chips fall where they may. Easy to say if you're not the one sitting in that position, and you'll face it, but I don't care how hard it is, frankly. Just do the right thing. But here's where he's gotten himself into. Because he did not take any action and try to rein Israel in earlier on, early on, before when they first started doing these, huge attacks into the Gaza Strip, especially into Gaza City, and it was clear that they were literally destroying infrastructure, not just having targeted operations. He should have said something then. It's like, all right, this is a bridge too far. This is against our own law. And we're providing you all this stuff, and we'll keep doing it as long as you go after the people that are doing this, as long as it's targeted operations and not just area fire weapons to wipe out everything in a certain area here. That's what he could have done then, and I think he would have been okay. But because he let that go, then the anger starts rising higher and higher on the Palestinian side, on the people who support Palestinian among his voting bloc. And then, of course, you had the people on the Jewish side of that bloc who were saying, yes, we have lots of money. We'll keep giving it to you as long as you don't do anything. Just say nothing. Let this keep going, because, as you know, probably the public opinion in Israel itself is overwhelmingly behind Netanyahu. A lot of them don't even want him to give him food. They're actually okay with that part too. So he's not bucking his population here. But for Biden has to say, well, if I don't make the Palestinian side happy, you see what happened with the protest votes so far. That could get a lot worse. And you definitely know on the money side, if he makes the Israeli backers unhappy, they have lots of money and they'll put it somewhere else. It's not an empty threat that they would put their support behind Trump, and they're already courting him to make sure that that he also would benefit if he does what they want him to on that regard too. But the bottom line is, the electoral, it's not going to make any difference if you so destroy America's credibility and reputation for being an even-handed player that says we stand for human rights, that we stand for the freedoms of people, that we are against oppressing entire populations, which we accuse Russia of doing, for example. If we want to have the moral authority to continue to play that leading role, he's got to take some action, because I don't care about the presidential election. If you win at the expense of our credibility, we're not going to be any good on the international arena anyway, and it's going to cost every American, because now then we're not going to be able to tell a Russia or a China or somebody else who's doing something nefarious, because we have forfeited all the moral authority.
Well, my worry, though, with Biden in particular is he seems more interested in retaining power than doing what's right. And that's very dangerous to have a leader that believes that. So I guess we'll just see what decision he ultimately ends up making. I did think it was
And
interesting.
I'm sorry, Stephen,
Okay.
you asked me two questions there. Let me get the second part of it
Yeah.
there. Do I see any willingness to buck the old kind of just reflexive pro support to Israel? I do. I do see some changes in that. I would have to consider myself in part of that group there. There's lots of people that said, hey, we have always been pro Israel. And to be clear, I'm still pro Israel. I'm still pro Jewish people, but I am definitely not pro Netanyahu government and their policies. I'm against that. And so are lots of other people because they see, especially guys like me who fought in some of these counterinsurgency fights, who have fought and trained and prepared and planned for some of these kinds of operations. There's a way that you can do it to where you go after the guys who were legitimate terrorists. No one has questioned that. No one to this day questions that. But when you like wipe out the civilian population in the process of going after the terrorists, number one, you don't succeed because you create so many more enemies than you ever destroyed Hamas. But the second is it violates what we hold our own troops accountable for. And it's hard for a lot of American troops to say, okay, my government holds me accountable to this standard fighting in a built up area. And yet we're providing ammunitions and weapons and intelligence support to this side and tell them they can do whatever they want. That's not lining up.
Yeah, yeah. Well, even Tulsi Gabbard on the Tucker Carlson show, she said anybody who's been to war should have one of the loudest voices to avoid future war, because
Amen.
you've lived through that, the PTSD, what you see, what's required of you, and I think that's why she's become so vocal about, hey, listen, I have all this training, but what I've seen with my own eyes, we need to avoid this. And even Antony Blinken, who I believe is Jewish, or at least Jewish family, he told Israel yesterday, you are becoming indistinguishable from Hamas with the way that
Wow.
you are. Yeah, that's a bold thing to
That is a bold
say
statement. Yeah.
to the Netanyahu government. You're becoming indistinguishable from Hamas with your behavior. And now there's so much pressure on Biden. I do think that they are going to try to rein Israel in, but I don't know what's going to happen now with this fresh attack on Iran, where you
Right.
say, I mean, this was deliberate, this was calculated, this was crossing a line, and so are we going to support you? Yes. Are we going to support a multi-front war? I don't think so. Are we going to support the massacre of innocent women and children and men that don't want to be a part of Hamas? It gets a little bit dicey there. So I thought his words
Yeah.
were pretty cutting, but also very true.
Yeah, they are, but it's also problematic when they're coming because there's a number of other statements been made by even Kirby and the president have said some things. And if it hadn't have been for that bombing, then I might be saying, okay, we've talked before, but let's see some action. But right now, I think in this current environment, because what is surely coming is a really strong Iranian response, and if it's something really big, something commensurate with what happened here, people are going to forget about all that. Now then they're going to jump back again on Israel's the victim and they've been attacked. And there's so many people in America. And I've already seen some today like Jack Keane who are already ready to say, Iran has always been the snake head. We've always gone around it, danced around it. We've got to go after the head of the snake. And if they do anything to Israel, we've got to go after them. No, we don't. In fact, if we don't poke them and poke a stick into the beehive, so to speak, they'll stay in the beehive. They can be contained. Absolutely, they can be contained. But if you go and you punch them in the face or you kick their face in their embassy, they're going to react and to retaliate. What we have to be careful of, and I don't know how we're going to do this, Stephen, to be honest. You talk about Biden and emotions and stuff. If you see this emotional issue where there's some attack on an Israeli city or an embassy or even some other iconic building, for example, there's going to be outrage and all this stuff and lots of video. And I don't think anybody's going to then say, now's the time to be tough on Israel. You know what I mean? So I think that we're setting up for some real problems to whatever leverage we may have may vanish as soon as Iran does something in response to what Israel did.
Yeah. Okay, switching gear because we have limited time. I had about four more questions on Israel and Iran, but um, more and more I'm reading about Ukraine going deeper and deeper into their attacks on Russia. I understand why they would want to do that. Obviously, they are very beaten down. Their country has been through a lot, but I do worry about them going attacking into Russia, specifically their energy, their infrastructure, things like that. What are your thoughts? Is this them trying to hurt Russia like Russia has hurt them? Is this them crossing a line? Is this them pulling in Israel, trying to provoke something further so the U.S. will give more money, more weapons? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that number one, the bottom line, the war is over in terms of deciding and determining the outcome. It is irrevocably on Russia's side, and every month it will continue to get stronger and stronger in their side. I think that the chances are increasing, maybe as high as 50-50, that the Ukrainian army could crack and buckle somewhere major where they have a major penetration sometime between now and the end of the summer. Not necessarily a prediction because there's too many factors I can't personally assess, but just what I can assess, I think that there's a pretty high chance, an uncomfortably high chance that that happens. There is no chance that that gets reversed and that they start winning and pushing Russia back because the fundamentals, the manpower, the equipment, the industrial capacity, all of those are decisively on Russia's favor. What should be going on right now is that the West should recognize reality and say, let's start moving to a negotiated settlement to stop the killing, to freeze the line where it's at right here and make the best deal that you can get under these bad conditions to at least stop the war and stop the dying on the Ukraine side so that they can get in the process of rebuilding what they have. To ignore that is going to say there's going to be more death, more destruction, almost certainly the loss of more territory. There's a real cost for not accepting reality. What Ukraine is doing right now is to say, okay, we're getting hit with all these energy infrastructure and they're firing on all our ability to create energy, gas storage facilities. It's a big thing. So it's fair that they would retaliate and hit back on the Russian side. The problem is it's not going to have a strategic impact. It's going to make Russia mad and it's going to make them more convinced that they need to push harder to win their war faster and create more destruction. So they'll ramp up their attack. So even though it may be satisfying when they see these, Russian things blowing up and some of these refineries burning, and it makes great video for their side and makes them feel better, but it doesn't have any impact on the outcome of the war. It's only going to eventually make it worse for the Ukraine side. That's how I see it.
Yeah. Okay. That's kind of how I saw it as well. So I just wanted to get your insight. Final question back here in the United States. You probably reported on this. I reported on it. People are pretty horrified. 600 illegal immigrants start gathering on the Texas border. 100 of them rush the National Guard. They assault them, knock them down, break through the fence. They get in. A judge this week forgives the people that assaulted the National Guard, tried to break into the country, and that not only did they forgive them, no consequences, they let them into the country and gave them money to continue their journey of sneaking into the United States of America. How insulting is that to our men and women who volunteer in the National Guard? I was pretty horrified to read that.
I actually had not heard that about the judge and then providing money. That is shocking
They
to
just
me in any
just released
capacity.
them into the country.
I just, Stephen, cannot for the life of me understand what in the hell is going on in this situation here. I mean, we saw this situation, a couple months back in New York where the police were assaulted by immigrants and same kind of situation. They ended up getting let go and just give the finger to the American system and the American country, and the policemen are left just holding the bag. So I just can't imagine what in the world is going on. I mean, I keep saying over and over, and I have throughout, really, I mean, throughout my career, secure the border. Whatever immigration policies you want to have, you guys can work on that. You figure it out. You can argue back and forth between the Democrats and Republicans, but seal the border so that whatever the law is, it's kept and we decide who does and doesn't come into the country. But to literally not even try to stop them and then to actually help them when they assault and commit a crime against our national defense forces, I don't understand any rational or any logic that could go behind that. It's crazy.
Yeah. Come on in, no consequences. Here's some money. Maybe you'll
Here's
make
some
it to New
cash on your
York.
way. How can that be? And whoever is doing this, these judges or whatever, what if it was their family members that were assaulted? Would they then be handing out cash? I wonder. Maybe they would. I don't know.
I mean, the government spent a couple $1 million investigating whether a border patrol person on a horse whipped somebody from Haiti. It ended up being a fake story, but we have documentation. It's on video of them rushing and assaulting, and then they let them into the country. To me, I didn't serve in the armed services, but my family members have. And to me, I thought, wow, that is so insulting. And then, hey, here's some spending money while you break into the country. It just seems so wrong.
See, Stephen, I think that's even insulting just to law-abiding Americans, just anybody, even without the having service part. It's probably double so, especially for those people. But we're supposed to be a country governed by the rule of law. We say that all the time. How do you square that with what you just reported there, though?
Yeah, I don't. I guess that's why it frustrates my mind. Thank you so much, Colonel Davis, for coming on. If people want to follow you, what is the best way for them to do that?
Just Google Daniel Davis Deep Dive on YouTube, and we should pop right up there, and we'd be delighted to have anybody come and check our channel out.
Well, I'll do you one better. I'll put a direct link right below so that people can go and check out your channel. Thank you so much for everything
Appreciate
you
it.
do for the country, for keeping up on the news, these big stories, helping us understand what's really going on. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend.
I appreciate that. Thanks a lot, Stephen. Same to you.